What do you think of when you hear the term Gen Z? It may be kids from 1997 to as late as 2015 making TikToks, eating Tide Pods, or whatever stereotypes you know. But what does Gen Z think about being Gen Z? Well, to find out, I sent out a survey to those on my social network. I asked them 3 questions. What do you think is a defining trait of Gen Z? To which was responded with, taking our trauma or bad experiences and turning them into jokes. Next, what is an iconic moment of Gen Z, which is the interconnectedness due to the internet? And lastly, how do you, Gen Z, think we are different in comparison to other generations? To which, I think Gen Z is very open to other people's differences and celebrates those differences. Now that you've heard the general story, let me share with you a little bit about mine. As a 17-year-old, I've experienced a lot in comparison to other generations. A pandemic at the height of my social life being one of them. But with this time and distance, it's helped me to reflect on my life and what I've learned so far. As we've observed over this past summer, our country has become more and more socially and politically aware, with the death of George Floyd bringing an uprising in Black Lives Matter, and the recent spotlight on xenophobia that Asian Americans endure due to COVID-19. It's time we talk about the other elephant in the room, Islamophobia within the United States. Specifically, how its impact is different in comparison to other generations. It was a bright and sunny day. I was late to the 5th grade class in my public school, and on the way, I saw a little girl with a hijab. She was called names and was about to cry. That day, I learned that the hijab was feared by many. Fast forward a few years later. I now attend a private Catholic middle school, and it was the summer before 8th grade. My family and I had decided we would go to Paris, France. When we had returned, a terrorist attack had occurred. And a classmate of mine, he thought it'd be funny to publicly announce that my family and I must have been behind the recent attack. In that school, I was one of a few Muslim students. And as an awkward preteen who wanted to fit in, I knew that if I wore the hijab, I would get harassed. And if I didn't, be under fire for other hypocrisies. And yet, here I am in a situation where I'm not wearing the hijab, and yet still under fire for my religion. That day, I learned that if I wanted to survive, I would have to hide any trace of being a Muslim. Three years later, I'm here standing before all of your lovely faces to talk to you about what it means to unlearn my own past experiences and how those experiences has impacted me. Well, as a freshman in my current high school, I was amazed by all the affinity spaces I had never seen before. Black Student Union, Women of Color Association, even a Jewish student union. At the time, there was no Muslim affinity space. But I was quick to know that my school worked with the Muslim Educational Trust. In that moment, I decided I would unlearn everything I knew. When you look at what it means to unlearn, Google populates this definition, which essentially means to forget. But to me, it's not about forgetting. It's about going back to your past experience, unpacking it, then deciding how you want to deal with it now. Unlearning my past experiences has helped me in numerous ways. And it's through my one way of doing it, which was through self-reflection, observation, and research, with guiding questions on my morals, who I hang out with, my own experiences, and from the media I consume. That year, after doing that, I founded my school's Muslim Student Association, along with gave seminars about Uyghur Muslims, the Rohingya Muslims, and the hijab ban in France, to name a few issues that concern Muslims. Since then, I've been active in the diversity, equity, and inclusion work at my school. And because of an environment that not only encouraged me as a student, but as a person, I'm here now sharing with all of you the shared narrative that all Gen Z Muslims know by heart, which is that we all experience Islamophobia in some shape or form. When we look at Islamophobia, we think of it as judgment passed on a certain group of people, but not where that judgment comes from. When we look at the definition of what a phobia is, we see that phobias are thought to be learned emotional responses. It is generally held that phobias occur when fear produced by an original threatening situation is transferred to other similar situations, with the original fear often repressed or forgotten. For this to make more sense, we're going to take the metaphor of a plant. First, you have the seed. That's the original threatening situation. And as time goes on, that seed will grow, take conspiracies from that original threatening situation. As that seed has grown, it's a plant, it's matured, it has to reproduce, it has to spread to keep its population alive. That's tabloids taking falsifications from the conspiracy theories to stereotypes then being drawn from those falsifications, and then those stereotypes then being used to educate others, such as what parents teach their children and how DEI curriculums choose to address or don't address certain issues pertaining to racial groups, ethnic groups, and religious groups. And this can lead to a lot of things. For example, authoritarianism and conformity. Because when that seed is planted, this cycle of never-ending misinformation starts and goes and goes and goes. It then results in something like this. With this fear, authoritarianism, and conformity has a lot left in our society. So, as this generation of change, what can we do to help it? For us, change is not going to happen overnight. That's silly to think. But there's hope if we take it as a signal for change. This means bringing Gen Z into the political conversation. And while yes, there are many Muslim political leaders, they don't share the same values as Gen Z. And being in a group that has gone through it all under a short amount of time, dealing with the aftermath of several terrorist attacks, school shootings, systematic racism, climate change, and a global pandemic before going to prom. Change is going to take time, and I think we all know that. But you have to think, with that, yes, traumatic experience comes a different perspective. That's this perspective of change. So, how do we utilize that perspective of change? How does it fit within the cycle of misinformation? How does this benefit others in the incoming generations of Muslims? For a better future, you have to understand what we have now. And how we do that is through observations, self-reflections. More importantly, it's through activism, other forms of ways you advocate for yourself. When we think about change, I want to show you all A recent example that happened. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. That was a popular quote of Dr. Seuss. And as some of you may know, his works came under scrutiny because of the fact that they were racially insensitive. But because his family cared a whole awful lot, just like the Lorax. Not only did they acknowledge that these were racially insensitive, they took them down. This proves as a testament that we can change. Because it just takes one person to care a whole awful lot. Because unless we don't, nothing is going to get better. It's not. Thank you.